Hello. So, as Mark said, today is the 36th day of the Omer, and we're in the week of Yesod, the week of foundation, bonding, connection, right? And we're on the day of Chesed, the day of loving kindness. And I was thinking about the relationship of these two, and especially uh, in connection with an event that took place last week. I'm sure many of you heard that last week there was a terrible tragedy in Meron. And I heard about it on Friday, which was Lag BaOmer here. Um, uh, and personally, I have been actually spending a lot of time watching videos from that very same yearly celebration in Meron because I've been doing research on Hasidic dance. So I felt very personally touched and dismayed by this disaster. And also as I, tried to find out what was happening and went to the internet, as we often do, I also saw that there was a lot of hurtful things being said. There are, it seems that no matter what, anything that's announced on the internet gets responses from people who have something hurtful to say. And I really was thinking about that and how it relates to these elements of chesed and yesod. Because the other thing that I saw that was a surprise was that there have been some really beautiful acts of chesed. So many of you may have seen that in the neighboring Arab towns around Meron, people were welcoming people into their homes and into the community and offering food and shelter to people who had to leave Meron because of what had happened and who were trying to make their way back home. And also, you may have seen that there was this there was a blood drive, and about over 2,000 Israelis, people of very different walks of life, came forward to give blood, to literally give of themselves at this time of need. And I was very moved by the fact that um, that these were people looking and seeing rather than feeling a sense of disconnectivity, right? They felt chesed and connectivity so much so that they were willing to open their homes to people who were very different from them, to offer food and shelter, and to literally offer some of themselves by giving blood. Um, so I was thinking about that and thinking about the symbiotic relationship that exists between chesed and yesod, that exists between loving kindness and this sense of bonding and foundation. And of course, because one feeds the other, right? So I'll give you a personal example. So in my personal example, my interest in Meron really came from a love of dance and a love of music because they have a very special klezmer music that comes out of Meron. And because of these amazing celebrations that take place there. And so I became interested because of that love. And that was not necessarily a love of people, that was a love of things, right? I guess you could say it's indirectly a love of people because all of that culture pours out of people. But then because of that, I felt a bond, right? And that feeling of bond, even with a community that's very different from me, that may have very different practices, very different values, maybe than my own personal practices, I felt a sense of bond, you know, I feel a sense of connection to them. And then because of that sense of connection, when this tragedy occurs, I feel even more chesed, even more compassion than I might normally, right? If I didn't have already that sense of connection and bond. So as you see, the one can feed into the other and the other feeds into the one. And if you look at the Israeli example, it's similar. that there are people who are looking and seeing, perhaps maybe even just because of their proximity, saying, oh, here are people in need and I can open up to them, right? It evokes this chesed, it brings forth this feeling of chesed. And from that, God willing, there will be bonds that are built, right? If I think of this potential for there to be contact, human contact between people, and that's a really powerful thing. And these are the kinds of bonds that I think we especially need at this time. If you think about the condition of our world right now, one of the great tragedies is that there's so little sense of bonding with each other. We feel more and more alienated, even sometimes with people who normally would be close to us because of our current situation. We can feel very alienated. So I wanted to do a little work with Chesed and with Yesod today in our meditation practice. And I wanted to start out by saying, first of all, that um, breath practice for most of us is really the foundation of all of our other practice. And sometimes, sometimes we get so excited about trying different things that we can forget how important that foundation is, right? And being in touch with that foundation. And then regarding Hesed, I also want to say that it's very important to remember that one of the keys to developing Chesed for others is how we develop Chesed for ourselves. So, in other words, we have an internal voice that speaks to ourselves. And if we can cultivate a voice of Chesed for ourselves, it's much easier to turn that Chesed to others. Whereas if we are speaking to ourselves always with a voice of um, criticism or harshness or intolerance, then that voice tends to leak, as it were. I always think of it as leaking. It tends to leak out in how we communicate with others, right? And how we treat others. So just keeping that in mind, I want to ask you to bring yourself to a comfortable seated position. And if you have a regular practice, you may already know that you like to sit on a chair or perhaps on a cushion. But otherwise, just bring yourself to a position that is upright and has this sense of being grounded in a strong foundation, yet is relaxed. There's a sense of chesed, a gentleness. And I want you to turn that gentle lovingness, turn with that gentle lovingness, turn your attention to your breath. You can let your eyes close, or if you prefer, simply allow your great gaze to drop. And just bringing sort of a gentle lovingness to that attention to your breath. Noticing that along with this attention, you may begin to feel a sense of bond, a sense of connection with this breath, and almost sort of a breathingness. allowing yourself to sink into this breath as your foundation. Each in breath sinking deeper into the body, each out breath releasing with more ease, more kindness. And as that breath sinks deeper into your body, you may notice the foundation of your body relaxing. Receiving that breath with a sense of deliciousness, a sense of love. And as you breathe, you may notice that the movement of the breath gently moves the base of your body, massaging that foundation, gently moving aside the muscles around your sit bones, expanding and releasing around your sacrum, perhaps even the muscles in your legs and your buttocks that support you. Your lower back. Stay with this attentiveness to the sense of the breath in your lower body, to the sensation of groundedness and foundation. Deeply connected to your breath. Now, if you find that your thoughts trail off into reverie or narrative, as thoughts do, just approach them with kindness and love. I see you. And then imagine as if you're taking the hand of a precious child and just gently leading them back home, back to this sense of bonded connectivity. So gently, with so much compassion and love, so much patience, like a well that no matter how many times your mind may stray or your thoughts may wander, you simply turn to them with love. I see you. I see you're wandering. And like taking the hand of a little child, just draw them back to the breath. And the deep movement of the breath in the body. And in the foundation of the body. And we'll continue to sit like this for a few moments more. And when it is time to finish, I will ring a bell.
Thank you so much, Heather, for leading us so beautifully in that integration of Chesed and Yesod. As we begin this week together, it was just perfect. Thank you so much, friends. We bring that energy and that practice into the recitation of Kaddish, which seals our practice. As you know, we invite those of you who are in mourning or observing a yard site to add the name or names of anyone you'd like to include in our chat box now or after the recitation of Kaddish. And then invite those of you who are reciting Kaddish to join me in rising in body or in spirit um, for Kaddish. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah,
Amen.
Yama Divra, Chirute, Vyamlich Malchute, V'chayechon, Vyamechon, V'chaye Dechal Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, Uzman Karib, Vimru, Amen.
Amen.
Yehi Shmei Rabba Barach, Ame Almaya. Barach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yikamam v'yinaseh v'yitah v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudsha b'richu v'yelam kol birchata v'shivata v'shivata v'amiran ba'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'Yisrael v'imru amen. Yaseh shalom b'mamav, v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru amen.
Amen.
Friends, thank you so much, as always, for joining us for our practice today. And for those of you who are leaving us, I want to invite you back and hope you join us sometime the rest of this week. I'll be leading us to practice tomorrow. On Wednesday, Kohenet Kashira Halev Veit will be leading us. Thursday, Yael Shai. And Friday, Aviva Chernik. We're looking forward to a wonderful week of practice in this 6th week of the Omer, the week of Yesod. And wonderful way to lead it off. With this practice today, led by Cantor Heather Batchelor. Thank you so much, Heather. As always, thanks to you, Adi Stein, for holding our tech container with grace and skill. Thanks to you, Eileen Monahan Chopnik, for dedicating our practice today in memory of your mother, Eleanor Monahan, on the occasion of her yard site. Zichronah Libracha, may her memory be a blessing always for you, and may her soul be elevated through the merit of this practice today. Of course, you're welcome to stay on for conversation with Cantor Heather Batchelor about today's teaching and practice. And for those who are leaving us, wish you well, be safe and well for the rest of your day. And we hope to see you soon. Thanks. Oh, there we are. Hi, Heather. Thank you. That was just wonderful. And as I think, as you know, I like to kind of do a quick review of the teaching and go back over it just for clarifying questions. So, and I find it helpful sometimes when I just sort of report back what I got and then see if I heard you right. Okay, so the horrific events in Maroon. First of all, I appreciate you again bringing that in because that's reverberating for a lot of people I know, including myself. And using it to illustrate the dynamic of Chesed, the connection between Chesed and Yesod. And I just wanted to see if you could just maybe repeat that a little bit, because what I heard was witnessing and experiencing a sense of a Chesed in the aftermath of a disaster like that. Chesed as I think, as you described it, bonding, feeling connected, right? Recognizing and making manifest the underlying connectivity of our human relationships. The piece that I think would be helpful for me is to hear is like how you were connecting that with the Yesod.
Right.
I mean, I had a take on it, but maybe it's the same as yours. But what's yours?
So, of course, whenever we're doing this work with the Omer, it's like there's a lot of crossover, right?
Right.
Between these Mudot or Sphirot, right? They have relationships to each other, and they have elements of each other, right? Um,
Yes.
so um, I
Even
think,
more than that, they all contain all of them, right?
right,
That's the
exactly.
idea.
They all have, right, exactly. Um, so on one hand, I think that Chesed opens us up to deeper bonds. When you think
Hmm.
of like, you think of the elemental bonding that we experience is the parent-child bonding, right? And there's been a lot of studies on that, and just the fact that just being in each other's presence helps to develop that bond. But certainly, loving kindness opens us up to a bond. In other words, um, when we turn to someone with loving kindness, it opens something in us that allows us to bond with them. Whereas if we turn to them with a sense of fear or anxiety or judgment, we tend to push away that bond. We're afraid of getting too attached. We're afraid of letting people in, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I think that goes for things beyond other people. I think it goes for parts of ourselves, certainly. And it certainly goes for experiences as well, right? When we can turn to an experience with a sense of love and patience and compassion, then we can really allow ourselves to be in that experience. Whereas if we come to that experience with sort of, you know, fear, like, what's this going to be like?
Hmm. Hmm.
Or judgment, I don't know. Is this a good thing? Then it can be very hard for us to really connect.
Hmm.
There actually was a really wonderful article in the New York Times this weekend about this idea of languishing, that a lot of people are experiencing this place that's not really fully functional, but it's not depression, it's someplace in between. And the thing that was the real hiddish to me, the real sort of revelation in this article, was that for a lot of us, the thing that can help us bring us out of that sense of languishing is what he called flow. So, in other words, when we immerse ourselves into an experience that allows us to be completely in that experience. So he gave some very simple examples of like even doing a crossword puzzle where for just that 30 minutes or 45 minutes or however long it takes you to do your crossword puzzle, you just allow yourself to be absorbed in that, right? But
Hmm.
certainly I think meditation
Hmm.
is um, it's probably one of the purest forms of that practice of allowing oneself to be in flow. Um, and I do think that um, I think that when we have that sense of connection, right, a sense of connection with flow, sense of connection with ourselves, sense of a connection with the experience we're in at this time, it actually allows us to have um, more chesed. It allows that chesed to pour out, right? Because
Hmm.
when we have that sense of connection, there's less fear, right? And that fear tends to lock down our ability to, um, to really um, look at ourselves and look at others with real chesed. Is
So
that
yeah, so
adding more? Did I just add more to the soup, or did I clarify things at all?
it's all right. The soup is good. It's delicious soup. Um, so there is a question which inevitably comes up, of course, about chesed and those for whom it's hard for us to experience chesed. For example, you mentioned, and I think it's Lauren, the people who came out to celebrate what happened, or to, you know, cheer for it. Um, what do you suggest there? That, like, the person, Lauren wrote, how do you feel chesed for anti-Semites who crawled out on social media, and the people on the PA, who handed out candy in celebration, or You said so it elicited both chesed and something else. So I
Yeah.
probably we need to say something about that too, I think. If you have anything, which is
Yeah,
okay if you don't,
I'm
Yeah,
reflecting on this. And
yeah.
I think the first thing I think about is um, that feeling of hatred and anger, and
Mm-hmm.
putting myself in touch with that feeling of hatred and anger, and the times when I've felt those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and um, on one hand, they're very, we all know that they can be very energizing. They're very um, uh, they're very drug-like sometimes, those
Mm-hmm.
feelings of anger,
Mm-hmm.
but they always come out of really deep pain, you know.
Right.
um, they always come out of really deep pain, um, and I think that's where we can bring the chesed, is just being able to recognize um, that there's got to be really deep pain there, um, and also the fact that um, latching onto those feelings, and sort of allowing ourselves to get caught up in their um, power, and I want to say addictiveness,
Mm-hmm.
um, that it always leads someplace that's more pain. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so having compassion for that. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
hard. It's hard. Uh, and I had to say, it's interesting because I've seen the negativeness that I'm seeing coming out right now. It's not necessarily, uh, I'm seeing it come out in our own community as well. And that's
Yeah.
really very painful to watch.
Yeah.
Um, so I think, compassion for that fact of there being pain there, and also even compassion for our own pain in watching it,
Right.
because we I think we
Right.
sometimes want to cure that or fix that as possible
Right.
as soon as
Right.
possible, right? When we
Right.
see it.
Um, I mean, I appreciated that you referenced that self-compassion, chesed towards ourselves. It wasn't necessarily in that particular context, um, but basically it was for this image, the sense of being bathed with chesed, which with whatever comes up. So I know at least one person was, once was asking for justifiably, unpacking these Hebrew terms, chesed, which we've been using loving connection, or it's usually translated as loving kindness, just to make sure that's clear. So this is loving kindness as a way into, or as a gateway into, or as a vehicle for experiencing yesod, which is a little bit more difficult to unpack. The Hebrew word yesod literally means foundation, and it can refer to an array of qualities, including the idea of being a tzaddik or tzadeket, of righteousness, foundational righteousness. And the other thing I wanted to mention before we end, Heather, is that I really appreciated what you did with the practice. And if this is just the only takeaway for people, at least for me, Dayenu, that's enough for me. The connection between breathing and the foundation of the seat, the foundation of the body. And on Friday, Marita Anderson was speaking of, was Hod Sheba Hod. And uh, she was speaking about bringing attention from the sacrum to the crown of the head, basically.
Mm.
And that's where I went when you said that. And I hadn't really thought about what the sacrum is. I'm not a student of anatomy, and I'm not sure how many are, but the sacrum apparently is a triangular bone that includes five vertebrae that fuse together in young adulthood, that support that connect everything, connect the hips, the legs, and the spine. It's kind of the fulcrum of literally the fulcrum of our skeleton. And for me, it's just a word, the sacrum. Where's that? Somewhere down here, somewhere in my lower back. But to really understand that as kind of the thing that holds it all together, right? That's like the tripod, or whatever, the foundational uh, structure, and breathing into that, and the connection between loving connection and rightness. So, for example, go back to that example of, like, the disturbing things that people say, they're reacting out of their sense of injustice. Yes, it's just, in some way that people celebrate what they consider a correct, a just action. And we have that same capacity too. The question is, how do we infuse our sense of justice with compassion and kindness and loving connection? Or how do we build our sense of justice out of chesed, or a sense of connection? So I really felt like your practice of breathing and the flexibility and the softness and fluidity of the breath into the kind of skeletal structure of the whole thing, that the world rests on justice, basically, but it has to be infused with chesed.
Yeah, I think the other thing about Yesod that's really helpful to think about is that when we feel stable,
Mm-hmm,
right,
mm-hmm,
and we feel grounded and we feel safe, it's so much easier to be a tzaddik. It's so much easier to feel that we have the space to give to others, to be patient with others, to take risks with
mm-hmm,
others, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
When we feel that sense of being safe and grounded.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's
I,
really true.
I'll tell you that when I teach bar and bat mitzvah students, a lot of students confuse the letter ayin with the letter tzadi, right? And the tzadi, if you look at them, one of the distinctive characteristics of the tzadi is that it has a very flat bottom. So I usually say to them, if you had to choose to stand on top of one of these letters, which one do you feel would be safer? Right? And they usually say right away the tzadi, right? And I think there's a connection between that and tzedakah and
Wow,
tzedek, right? That it has that strong base. Yeah.
that's fantastic. Heather, that's fantastic. That was worth the price of admission. That
We
alone.
almost didn't say it because we were running over.
Oh no, that's so good. That's so good. I will not say it to my bat mitzvah girl this week, because she'll consider it too cringy, but I'll take it. I will definitely take it. So
She's
that's
probably
a
not
great.
still learning her letters. She's probably not
Oh
still
my
learning
God.
her names.
Don't get me started. Okay. But okay, so foundation, Yesod as foundation, and Tzaddik or Tzadeket or Tzedek, righteousness, the letter Tzadi, and the flat bottom and the strong support, we shall not be moved. Okay. Heather, thank you again, as
Yeah.
always. So appreciate your teaching and presence and wisdom, and I know everyone does too. Thanks, Adi. And thanks to all of you. We'll be back to, thanks to Eileen, of course, for sponsoring, and we'll be back tomorrow and hope to see you then or sometime later.